The Embody Keys practice is the culmination of a wide and deep exploration of human movement, which is to say, it is a deep exploration of conscious embodiment. We as humans have forever been fascinated by life and by the human experience and the alchemy of how spirit, how energy integrates and animates life. The keys are a distillation of movement. They, as a system, as a language, are a platform that we can leap off of into remembering what it is to move consciously, to recover and really heal and return to the full potential of human movement. So this is, again, a recalling, a remembrance that the joints, for example, move in certain ways. They have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years or longer from quadruped to biped, and that's a little bit of a mystery anyway. But to understand that we are still in the evolutionary process, so to feel back into what it is to be human and try to recall what it is to live in the wild, to move as if we are still in the wild, even though we're in our modern aesthetic, we realize that all systems, including Embody Keys, are technologies for recalling that which we already know. But please understand that this practice is an invitation into the intuitive and the innate, that you know how to move, you know how to breathe, how to heal, how to play and dance, you know how to be one with yourself and with life. And that we must move. We must move energy. We must move to express. In the first segment of this program, we'll talk about our origin story, or one example of an origin story. It's a way to kind of bring us into a place of common understanding where, why do we practice? What are we after? We ask the big questions. Why are we here? What are we? Who are we? The introduction today is to invite you into a simple understanding of the structure and the language of the Embody Keys practice. So there are 4 branches, 4 deep spokes to the wheel of the Embody Keys practice. The first is simple. They are the shape keys. And the shapes simply, to go into much deeper detail later, just understand the shape keys as innate human shapes. At this current state of evolution, what are our most common human shapes, our human functional shapes? So the shape keys are, as examples, standing, sitting, lunging, lying down even, crouching. There are 7. And the shapes are really beautiful because they're gateways. They are keys, invoke so many things. They turn locks and open doors. It could even have rich musical implications and connotations. So the musical piece, especially when we start finding variation in movement through the shape keys, then we understand a lot already about this practice, because the shapes, for example, if you're standing and you start to really look at standing and feel standing and understand like what is possible. I just had a moment, understanding. I've never realized that before. what is possible when standing? So if we look at it from a functional sense, we might say that we're standing, we're balancing, we're picking things up, we're holding our children, we're out in the woods, and we're simply standing on uneven terrain, and we are becoming more aware of our surroundings. But as this example of a shape key, to be aware of standing and to get in there and start to move in standing more consciously. Like it could just simply be how we walk, how we witness our walk, our simple primal locomotion. It could also be finding the rhythm and the pulsation of movement within standing. And the gateway just simply means that is an invitation to recognize the shape of standing as an invitation into human movement and variation becomes so diverse all by itself, it's inspiring. So we can do so much when we're standing. All of the global articulation from the core, all of the micro articulation of the joints, the breath's articulation, the expression of tone. So the shape keys invite variation. They invite movement and exploration. And that's the key word. We are explorers. So the keys, the shape keys are, we turn the key, we open the door, we get into these shapes, these loose shapes, and then we start to explore, we find variation. Think of it as a strong metaphor. Think of it as an artist's sketch. The shape keys are how we begin. It's that loose sketch. But within that sketch, there are so many possibilities. And we'll talk more about this when we get to the shape keys in definition and in depth. So the nuance and the subtlety, that's the fun part. Get into the shape, the sketch, and then the art begins to show itself through the play and exploration of that particular shape. Which leads us to the navigation keys, the second primary branch of the practice. The navigations are more subtle and complex movements that are happening simultaneously within the shape keys. There are ways to describe how we explore our environment, are more aware of our surroundings, both internally and externally. So some of the examples of the navigation keys, we pivot, we change direction, right? And this right away, we can turn the head, and that's different. That's revolution. I do discern between revolution and pivot. Pivoting is happening in the pelvis, in the core. We change the compass direction in the pelvis. We can also, there's a sub-pivot in how we rotate the hips, right? We rotate the hips and the shoulders. That's another kind of pivot. There's also a revolution of the spine to look around in our environment and be aware spatially, to have the freedom to be able to do that, right? We side bend, we bend sideways. So where we fold in a shape, that's a functional shape. Side bending is more a process of balance and locomotion and walking and running, but it's also about reaching. So again, we'll get into all of this. This is just a primer. So navigations are about spatial awareness within the play and construct of shape keys. So we have shapes as the portals into variation, and then within the beginnings of the play, as we start to see what's possible in a certain shape, we're understanding a little bit more about the navigations. Okay. The third branch of the practice of the Embody Keys practice are function keys. No, so we're also moving from gross to subtle. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that, gross to subtle. But we're moving from the sort of palpable, dynamic, tangible to something that we start to understand more the subtlety of what's happening when we move. So, as an example, the function keys describe things like push and pull, of reach and coil, okay? The function of pulsation, which is the fundamental rhythm of movement. It's evident in walking, it's evident in locomotion, but as a practice, how do we find the function of pulsation? And this is where the dance enters in everything that we do. We have pulsation in the heartbeat, in the cardiopulmonary rhythm, the breath, in the heart, and we have the slower rhythms of the craniosacral tides. But we also have just a simple rhythm of the pelvis, of the core, of the beating dance rhythm of movement itself. So this describes how we start to push and pull within ourselves. We start to explore. Again, as children, we did this naturally. We push and pull against the fabric of life, of experience, of space, time. And finally, and most deeply, we have the integration keys. The integration keys are levels of embodied awareness cultivated over time. Remember that this is, and it is an innate human right to be consciously embodied like all of nature. We have this capacity to be self-aware, the sentience, and the wakefulness. Integration keys describe and invite meditations not separate from, although they will be introduced as separate meditations, they really describe what is our current level of integrated embodied awareness of, for example, the breath of life. So how conscious can I be of the breath of life running in the background, this awareness running in the background while I'm speaking? But more importantly, while I'm moving dynamically, or what is my level of conscious embodied breath throughout the day? What is my embodied awareness of being close to or within the midline, or the gravity center of the core, of inhabiting the pelvis? Of the tone, or tonality, as I like to call it, of the entire embodied experience. Again, going back to the sort of musical parallels, these are integrations. These are levels of awareness that are like facets of a jewel, allow us to come in from multiple angles and really understand in the body the ancient teachings of meditation, of practices of understanding energy and organizing ourselves as natural creative beings. The integration keys are the deepest level of content, the deepest category of content in this program. And of course, we'll be building practices. We'll be building practices based on all of this as we go along. So, welcome to the Embody Keys program. It's six weeks working with these various aspects of the practice, and also inviting you to move and to play. And I really look forward to this. So thank you, and I'll see you soon.